Okay, stop the music.
There's a story that I got told which I call Blue Billy and the Belching Bucket of Blood. And a friend of mine called Nick one day was going out with a friend of his when they were 14 on the cycling. And Nick was going down the road with his friend behind. And he saw a pothole, so he swerved to avoid it. But his friend behind was far too close to actually avoid it. So he went into this big rut. And he got thrown off to the right on his bike. And he hit an oncoming Range Rover that was coming the other way, which hit him like right on the head and knocked him off the bike. But he looked okay, and he was knocked out. And the Range Rover totally freaked out. The guy who was driving it, he said, "I'll go get help." So he goes off to get help. And he sat his friend up, who's called Billy, on the side of the road, and he was just blinking. And looking very confused and kind of dazed and not quite there. So he was like, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay?" Trying to kind of make him feel calm, because he'd just been hit in the head with a Range Rover. And after a while, he was wearing a white t-shirt. It started to kind of ripple, and it was rippling in a really weird way. And he was quite confused by it. He was looking, he didn't know what to do. And Billy belched hot blood all over him, and then just passed out. Apparently he was dead anyway. He was already dead from the Range Rover.
That reminds me about this. My doctor told me that one night he was on call, and about 2 o'clock in the morning this call came from the police, and they said, "We want you to come and certify this body dead."
Dead body?
We want you to come and certify this body as dead.
Right.
You need a doctor to certify a dead body. So he said, "Oh God." So he went out and he drove to this little cottage out in the country. And he walked in the door, the police showed him through to the front room. And there was this girl, and she looked like she was just asleep in the armchair by the fire.
Bless her.
And he thought, what's wrong here? So he walked round and he saw that half the girl's face was just missing. In fact, half her head was just missing, the other side from where he walked in. And there was a pyramid of blood on the floor, where the head had dripped down. And what had happened was a
pyramid of blood.
A pyramid of blood. Dried blood, it was dried. And what had happened was that the child that she was babysitting for, the 5-year-old son of the house, had been showing her his father's shotgun. And obviously somehow he got it to point at her head and he pulled the trigger. And so half her head was missing. And the child was upstairs shivering.
Shivering?
Shivering.
Fucking hell. A girl that my sister used to go to school with told me a story about. She said one day she was in the house and her father was crawling around on his knees on the floor, messing around. She was like leaping on his back, having a really great time. So she kind of got on his back and just messing around. And
like horses.
Like playing horses.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he started coughing and kind of collapsed. And he crawled underneath the sideboard.
The buffet?
The sideboard. And just kind of laid there. So she crawled in there, she was 6 at the time. She got him, she pulled him out. When she pulled him out, all this black stuff just came out of his mouth. He was just lying there. And she just thought, he was dead. So
she didn't know that?
Well, she thought he was dead. You know. I didn't believe it, but I thought it.
Thought he was just playing.
Well, they were playing horses, so she bounced in that. So he goes out, so she runs to the door, and her mum's saying goodbye to a neighbour who's just been visiting the house. So she grabs her mum and goes, "Mum, Dad's dead, Dad's dead." So mum goes, "Don't be stupid," and sends her away. She goes, No, Dad's dead, Dad's dead. So eventually mum comes and has a look, and goes, "Oh my God," and sends this taller kids, "Get upstairs." So 2 sisters are there as well. They all go upstairs. Mum goes back out, calls the ambulance, and she said she remembers watching the ambulance come and take the body away, and he was dead. And she said that she was only 6, and she just remembers being really excited that an ambulance was coming. It's just a weird one.
There was this old married couple near where my mum and dad lived, and at one point the wife said to the husband, "We're not having sex anymore. We're just not. We're not going to have sex anymore. I've gone right off you." And the husband said, "Okay." He was a bit upset, but carry on. And to get over it, he completely immersed himself in his work, which was he had a coach building business. Just worked all hours of the day.
Building coaches.
Well, car repairs, coach repairs, that sort of thing. And then, he was quite fine, no sex, working away. And then gradually, what happened was he met this young girl who took quite a shine to him. So he started up a relationship with her. And then the wife started to notice that the husband was coming in the evening, getting washed, putting on aftershave, getting dressed up and going out. So she started to think, "Oh, what's going on here?" So she started to do herself up a bit. She went to a fitness farm, she had her face done, she started taking a real interest in her appearance again, to try and get him back. And of course, by this time, he found a younger woman, so he wasn't at all interested in any of her attempts. And then it eventually got to the point where the wife said, "Okay, if you go out tonight, I'm going to kill you." And the bloke said, "Don't be stupid.
As
fuck
you
off.
would.
But I'm going out, you're not stopping me, I'm going out." So he went out, and he came back later that night. The house was dark. He opened the door, couldn't turn the light on. He went up the stairs, and he got to the top of the stairs, and his wife was waiting for him with a shotgun to blow his balls off. And she pulled the trigger, blasted his groin and testicles away. He went to hospital. He was still alive. Went to hospital, and he was operated on. They tried to get all the pellets, and he was in hospital for some time until he died. And the reason he died was that they'd left some bullets inside, and he'd got gangrene, internal gangrene. And so they tried to get her lawyers tried to get her off because she didn't kill him. It was just negligence on the surgeon's part.
So whose fault was that, then? The surgeon?
Well, she was bonkers, really.
I don't know.
So they didn't send her to jail.
I know. Gary Hume told me a funny story. Well, it's not funny. About a guy you see was walking down the street one day. Actually, it was a friend of his. It wasn't him, it was a friend of his. Was walking down the street when they were on some course, doing a little kind of art course or something. And this friend of his was walking down the street over one of the bridges in London. And they passed somebody who was trying to cross over the bridge. Just as they passed them, at the corner of their eye, they saw the person step out, and then just heard a gunshot, a fucking gunshot. So they turned around, and they got hit by an Arctic, and they said the truck...
Oh, what?
An Arctic lorry.
Oh, right.
Articulated lorry.
Yeah.
Short for articulated. And went over this guy, over his chest. He said he just saw his head, and it's also got up in the air, and his guts spew out of his mouth. And then had to go in to do this course with Gary, and was like going...
Guts spewed out of his mouth.
Yeah, the truck went over his stomach. Guts came out of his mouth. Horrible.
The same doctor that told me the other story, he told me that he had to go to this other scene where another girl was babysitting in another house, but this house had a pool and it was a daytime babysitting. It was two families with 2 kids each had gone out. The mother, 2 sets of parents had gone out for the day and left this babysitter with 2 sets of children, young babies, kind of, 3, 4, 5-year-olds.
Young.
And young, yeah. And they had a pool, swimming pool, and the babysitter fell asleep on a lilo. She was lying on the lilo in the middle of the pool, and she fell asleep. It was a sunny day, and she was woken up by the sound of the parents' cars coming back, and parents came round and said, "Oh, hi." And she looked round, and there were all 4 babies face down in the pool around her, dead.
Negligence. This is a fucking terrible story. And my brother told me one. So when he was at work, and he's not into that kind of thing at all.
What kind of thing?
Horror. But he said he used to work as a French polisher. So they had this wood workshop, and he was working on this. There was a guy in the wood workshop working on a circular saw. And he had a massive, huge piece of timber. It was about
A killer saw, or a circular saw. A circular saw.
And it was a piece of wood, I don't know, about 18 feet long, very long. And he was pulling it through the saw on his own, pushing it through. You know, you push it through.
Yeah, you push it through.
And behind him, where the wood was, it cracked off with a really big splinter, but it didn't actually break off. It just cracked because of the weight of the wood. And the splinter went into his elbow and started pulling him along with it. It went in a little bit and started dragging him along. So he had to go with it. Because, the saw was pulling the wood in. So he went
ferocious, those saws.
They don't mess about, I'm sure. So it was pulling the wood in. And he got really dangerously close to the saw, so he thought, I've got to get off here. But he was stuck in his arm, so he couldn't get his arm away. So he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll yank my arm back onto the splinter and then snap it off. Which is the only way I can do it. So he yanked his arm back and got the splinter right up into his arm. And he couldn't snap it off. And he just pulled it right through. And he cut his 2 fingers off right across there. And I said to my brother, what did you do? And he said his fingers just plopped on the floor, and there was blood all over this. He said he'd never seen so much blood in such a tiny amount of time. I said, what did you do? And my brother, who's not squeamish, who is squeamish, or isn't, I don't know.
No, I don't think he is.
But he just said, I just threw up. Then he said the foreman came in and went, oh my God, ran over to the first aid box, got a surgical glove, picked the fingers up, popped them in, and popped the glove on his hand. Went to hospital, got it stitched on. It was alright. That's kind of happy one.
The hand was working.
I mean, it works. He's got a scar, like a line on both sides like that. They sewed it on.
Incredible.
It's true. It's a true story. It's my brother.
Well, yeah, I had a friend who was coming home quite late one night, and he got a black cab to take him home. And they were driving along in the cab down this dual carriageway. And they saw this guy, was obviously drunk, a pedestrian, walking down the pavement, zigzagging down the pavement, like lurching towards the road, lurching back again, lurching towards the road, lurching back again.
Done that.
It could happen to any of us. Anyway, they passed him, and my friend who was in the black cab didn't think anything more about it, but the guy said, my friend said, to the cab driver, he said, can you just drop me off here, this bus lay by, so I want to walk the rest of the way home. So the cab pulled over, and my friend got out and was paying the cab driver, and he just happened to look back, and pulled up behind them in the bus lane was this Range Rover.
The Range Rover.
Range Rovers seem to feature a lot. And the Range Rover looked rather strange. It had a big dent in the roof and the windscreen was completely smashed in. So he walked towards it to investigate. And there were these two guys standing beside, just looking at it. And sticking out of the windscreen onto the bonnet were two legs. And the guy thought, oh, hold on, this is a trick, this is like a joke, this is a setup to make it look like some kind of horrific accident. And as he got closer, he was suddenly hit by this wall of stench, which was a mixture of shit, piss, innards, and burning nylon. So then he realised it wasn't a joke, it was actually that this Range Rover had hit the guy that had been zigzagging down the pavement at 60 miles an hour. The Range Rover had been going, well, they found out later that the Range Rover was probably going about 60 miles an hour. And so what had happened was the guy had been hit by the Range Rover, had gone flying through the windscreen, gone flying between the front two people sitting in front of the Range Rover, and his head had ended up underneath the back seat, and his legs were out in the bonnet. But the legs were quite different. One leg was like a bag of raspberries that had been split open from the top of the thigh to the ankle, just a big bag of raspberries. And the other leg had been truncated at the knee, so that it was all pink and frothy. It was all pink and frothy. So everybody was standing around wondering what to do. The police had been called. Frothy, yeah. And then this little old lady came down the road and she said, "Here, what's going on? There's a leg 200 yards up the road."
The other leg, the missing leg.
The missing leg. And he saw the court plans afterwards, and there was the plan of the whole road for a stretch of 400 yards with an indication left sock, left shoe, right shoe, trousers, Range Rover, leg, body.
Fucking hell. A friend of mine called Marcus told me about a story like that. Not like that. But he said he was outside the Pompidou Centre in Paris. And he said he was just like minding his own business, enjoying himself, and he just heard a bang like a gunshot. It's just like a fucking gun going off. I can't believe it. So he, and then a crowd gathered. It's like middle of the day, big crowd. So he ran off over to the crowd, as you would. Pushed his way to the middle to see what happened, thinking somebody had been fucking shot. And there was just a very, very red and kind of bruised guy lying face down, splat.
Red and bruised?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like he'd been, you know, well, I mean, he jumped off the Pompidou Centre. So he was kind of flat out with like blood and stuff. But he said the noise was the thing that got me.
How did he describe the noise?
Like a gunshot. He said it was like a gun going off. He was convinced it was a gun when it was a guy.
But I heard somebody tell me something. They heard somebody fall off a building, and it sounded to them like a haversack full of jelly and bricks had been thrown off the top of the building. That's what it sounded like when it hit the ground.
That's probably sounds like a gunshot as well.
I know this girl called Gillian. She told me a story where she was waiting on the underground for a train, and it was quite a packed platform. And this guy that was standing right next to her, just as the train was coming in, he jumped.
No, tell the story, come on. Go on, no, I'm serious, tell me the story.
She was very upset by it.
Just tell me the story. So he jumped.
He jumped. He jumped.
Come on, what do you mean?
Once. He jumped once.
Right.
And obviously the train driver tried to put his brakes on, but he hit him. And
They always do that.
so after some time, they pulled the train back, and this guy was lying there. And she said, he was cut in half up here.
That's not a half.
Well, as near as Damien. And his eyes were still rolling. And she said there were big holes in him where the hot oil from the brake fluid, from the brakes of the train, had dripped onto him. And there were just big holes all the way through him. And he was still rolling his eyes.
And she saw it.
She saw it. He was standing right next to her when he jumped.
Gillian.
Gillian.